2024 has been the year of the Swan. After 15 rounds, Sydney have gone nearly undefeated, only bizarrely losing one game to a now 17th place Richmond. With a huge percentage of 149 and first place on the ladder, 3 games clear of any other team, what is it exactly that makes this Sydney Swans team so great? Well, it all starts in the goals department. Now, out of the top 30 goal kickers this season, 5 of them belong to the Swans. The next closest is the Bulldogs, with 4 of these players, but 2 of Sydney's players, Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner, are midfielders, which is actually quite rare. The only other midfielder on this list is none other than Marcus Bontempelli. Then you add clutch goal kickers like Tom Papley and Errol Goulden into the mix, and it's no surprise Sydney's the highest scoring team this season, averaging over 100 points a game. Then you look into their midfield. Although Sydney's not the team with the highest number of disposals, coming in at 6 for this year, they have many players who gather high disposal numbers and use the ball incredibly efficiently. Goulden's a perfect example of this. 35 disposals against Adelaide a week ago, with a lot of them opening up the other side of the ground, and 1 even setting up a goal. The big 3 of Goulden, Warner and Heaney are all averaging elite numbers of above 24 possessions a game. Now, tackling pressure and pressure in general, especially in the centre of the ground, is so important because it directly impacts clearance numbers. Currently, Sydney has arguably the greatest tackler in the game in James Rowbottom, who is second in the tackle count with 117, only 1 behind Matt Rowell. He's definitely one of the most underrated players in the AFL currently. But who is Sydney's second highest tackler? That would be Brodie Grundy, one of only a handful of ruckmen averaging over 5 tackles a game. Although they're only the 5th best tackling team in the competition, with Collingwood in the top spot, this could be because they don't let the other team get possession of the ball as much. Just a thought. Centre clearances and clearances are not one of Sydney's strengths. In fact, they rank about 8th in the league for each. But that's stats wise. From a fan's perspective, it appears that they've improved dramatically in this area. I mean, in 2022 and 2023, it was probably the key area that held them back, apart from maybe their backline. I've since realised that their improved clearance work has likely been due to their exit kicks being more efficient and finding a target. In the 2022 Grand Final against Geelong, Sydney won the clearance count 37-33, but couldn't get the ball in their own hands if their life depended on it. Now, thanks to more experience and the versatility of the team, it's never been easier. The Swans' backline has also subtly improved since their remarkable 2022 season. Big key forwards have been a major problem for their defence as of late. In round 10 2022, Carlton won by 15 points against Sydney, thanks to 6 goals from Charlie Curnow. And about 3 or 4 of those came from easy set shots, after Curnow exposed Tom McCartin in the air with strong bodywork, forcing McCartin to tug Curnow's jumper and give away free kicks. Later on in the grand final, Tom Hawkins did the exact same thing to McCartin, winning free after free and ending up with 7 scoring shots by the end of the game. The backline was also prone to making stupid brain fades, not looking at any players in particular. But now with Tom McCartin, Nick Blakey and Oliver Florent in pretty decent form, it's not as big of an issue. Communication between the back 6 players has also improved drastically, as previously, sometimes no defenders would fly for the ball. Blakey's runs down the wing and through the middle are crucial in transitioning the ball from the back line down to the forward line in record time. Let's now look at something that's not actually anything to do with the team's skills, and that's the mental aspect of the AFL. When most teams are down by 30 or 40 points, they kind of just give up. In 2014, the data showed that the first team to score 50 points wins about 80% of the time, no matter the margin. Now, there's probably only 2 teams who specialise in huge comebacks today. The first is Collingwood, whose 54-point comeback against North perfectly displayed this. The other is Sydney, who did it in back-to-back weeks. Geelong led 32-3 at quarter time at the SCG. Halfway through the second quarter, that 29-point lead was up to 35. But then, the Swans flipped a switch and kicked the next 5 goals in a row to trail by only 5 points at half time. And eventually, they ran over the top of Geelong and won by 30. Then, 1 week later versus the Crows, Sydney once again trailed 42-60 at the 5-minute mark of the third quarter. 5 minutes later, they'd kicked 6 goals, 4 of which were from Joel Amartey, and they led 81-60 at 3-quarter time. In the end, the Swans won by 42 points. But these poor first quarter starts could be a huge problem for Sydney, as has been pointed out by Matthew Lloyd. He said that Essendon used to do the same thing, thinking they could come back from any deficit, which cost them the 2001 Grand Final. However, when it comes to strengths, Sydney's biggest has to be its level of depth when it comes to the team's player lists. Sydney's worst player used to be Matthew Roberts by a long shot, but as he's adjusted to the league, the club doesn't have one standout worst player. And gun midfielders like Luke Parker and Callum Mills aren't even in the team yet due to injury. Peter Laddams used to feature pretty regularly, but now he's struggling to get a game because of Grundy. Even Robbie Fox is now usually listed as an emergency. If the players I listed were at any other club in the AFL, it's pretty likely they'd feature in their best 18. It's easy to forget, but the Sydney Swans were not always this good. 2019 and 2020 were horror years for the club, finishing 15th and 16th respectively. Round 6 of 2020 saw the Swans hit probably their lowest point in the last decade, losing to Richmond 34-26. It was ugly footy. John Longmire was heavily criticised for his defensive tactics that heavily prioritised stopping Richmond from scoring, and kind of forgot about the Swans' offence. But it was a handful of smart draft picks that would save the Swans and help create the AFL's ultimate trio. First, Chad Warner in 2019 with the 39th pick. Then, Errol Goulden with pick 32 in the next year's draft. The fact that Goulden was part of the Swans academy was actually how they secured him, as Geelong tried to steal him, but Sydney matched the Cats' bid. So, even though the Sydney Swans have almost gone undefeated this season, there's a few games coming up that they could potentially lose. The first is Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval, because Sydney haven't beaten the Power there once since 2016, regardless of the venue. And secondly, Essendon at Marvel, because the Bombers are undefeated there so far. So, which team do you think will beat the Sydney Swans next and hand them their second loss? Tell me in the comments, and make sure to subscribe if you liked this video.